All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're all about audio production. It doesn't matter if you're a total beginner or you've been doing this for years.
Yeah, there's something here for everyone.
We're going to find some cool new tips to level up your audio game.
That's right. I think a lot of people don't realize how much audio is in our lives
Mm.
and how understanding even the basics can empower you. We've got some great source material lined up.
Empowering is a great word for it.
Uh,
I was geeking out just reading through the research. Like, who knew there was so much to think about with mic placement? Or that game staging was such a crucial thing. It's like audio alchemy or something.
It really is. And speaking of alchemy, you can't do anything without the right ingredients, right? So let's start with the equipment.
Okay, so we're talking microphones, audio interfaces, headphones, monitors, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the source material really emphasizes how important it is to have good equipment.
So let's say I'm just starting out. What's the one thing I absolutely need?
The microphone. It's like the bridge between your sound and the digital world.
Okay, that makes sense. But there are a million different microphones out there. Where do I even begin?
Well, the source material breaks it down into two main types, condenser and dynamic.
Those sound familiar, but remind me what the difference is again.
Sure, condenser mics, you can think of them as the studio divas. Super sensitive, they pick up every little detail.
Oh, so when I picture those classic recording studios with the singers behind the glass, those are condenser mics.
Exactly. They're amazing for capturing those rich, nuanced vocals and instruments in a controlled environment.
Got it. So what about dynamic mics?
These are the workhorses. They're built tough.
Oh,
They can handle really loud sounds, so you'll see them a lot in live performances.
okay, like rock concerts and stuff.
Yep. Or if you're recording something super loud, like a drum set, you'd probably reach for a dynamic mic.
So condenser mics are for capturing the subtle sounds, and dynamic mics are for when you want to rock out.
Hmm.
I like it.
Exactly. All right, now after you've got your microphone, you'll need an audio interface.
Okay, audio interface.
Yeah.
I always get a little fuzzy on what that actually does.
Think of it like this. You're trying to have a conversation with someone who speaks a totally different language.
Okay.
You need a translator, right?
Yeah.
The audio interface is like the translator between your microphone and your computer.
So it takes those analog sound waves from the mic and turns them into digital signals that my computer can understand.
Exactly. And one of the key things to look for in an audio interface is something called low latency.
Okay, here comes the tech jargon. Break that down for me.
Have you ever been on a video call and there's a delay between what someone says and when you actually hear it?
Yeah, that's so annoying.
That lag is latency. And it can be a real headache in audio production, especially when you're trying to record or monitor in real time.
So a good audio interface with low latency keeps everything in sync.
Exactly. No more awkward pauses or delays.
Huh.
Okay, and the last thing on our dear list, headphones or monitors.
Yeah. I have to admit, I'm guilty of just using my regular headphones sometimes.
A lot of people do.
But the source material really emphasizes the importance of having dedicated studio headphones or monitors. Why is that?
Imagine trying to edit a photo, but the only mirror you had was all warped and distorted, like in a fun house.
Uh-huh.
Would you get a very accurate picture?
Definitely not.
It's the same with audio. Your everyday headphones might sound great for casual listening, but they're often designed to boost certain frequencies or add effects.
So they color the sound, so to speak.
Exactly. For audio production, you need accuracy.
Gotcha.
Studio-grade headphones or monitors give you a flat, neutral representation of the sound. They're like that clear mirror.
I see. So you can really hear every detail, every flaw, and make better decisions when you're mixing.
Precisely. Okay, now that we've got our gear sorted, let's talk about something else that can really make or break your audio quality.
I know it's coming. The recording environment.
You got it. We've all been on those video calls where you can hear every little sound in someone's background.
Yep, the dreaded echo chamber.
Exactly. Those echoes are caused by sound waves bouncing off the hard surfaces in your room. It creates these reflections that muddy up your audio.
So what can we do about that? Do I need to turn my recording space into some kind of padded cell?
Well, you don't have to go that far. You don't need a professional soundproof studio or anything.
Good, because that's not happening.
But there are simple things you can do, like using foam panels, blankets, even bookshelves strategically placed can help absorb those sound waves.
Oh, okay, so anything that can break up those hard surfaces and prevent the sound from bouncing around so much.
Exactly. And another thing is you want to eliminate as much background noise as possible.
That seems pretty self-explanatory. But I'm sure there are more sneaky noise culprits than we realize.
Oh, definitely. It's more than just finding a quiet room.
Like what?
Think about computer fans, humming refrigerators, air conditioning. Even those little subtle sounds can creep into your recordings and become really distracting.
Wow, I never would have thought about that.
Yeah, it's easy to tune them out in the moment, but when you listen back to your recordings, they can be super noticeable, so turn off anything unnecessary.
Good tip.
And if you can't eliminate a sound completely, you can use something called a noise gate during editing to kind of digitally silence those unwanted noises.
Ah, that's cool. Like
Yeah.
a virtual bouncer for your audio.
Love it. Okay, and the last tip for setting up your recording space has to do with monitor placement.
I'll admit, I always just thought this was about getting the right volume level.
Volume's important, but there's more to it than that.
Okay, well, the source material talks about this idea of setting your monitors up in an equilateral triangle with your listening position.
Yeah, that's cute.
So I should be sitting at one point of the triangle, and each speaker is at the other 2 points.
Exactly. It's about creating the sweet spot where the sound from each speaker reaches your ears at roughly the same time.
I see.
It makes a huge difference in terms of hearing the stereo image and getting a balanced sound.
So it's not just about volume. It's about creating the best possible listening experience so you can really hear what you're working with.
That's a great way to put it. So we've talked about gear, we've talked about optimizing your recording space.
Now it's time for the main event.
Yeah, actually hitting that record button.
All right, let's talk about recording tips then. What do we need to know to get the best sound possible when we're actually recording?
Mic placement is huge.
Okay, I figured that was coming. But again, this seems pretty basic.
It might seem basic, but it's super important because it really affects how everything sounds. The tone, the clarity, even the feel of the recording.
Okay, so how do we do it right?
Well, you want to think of the microphone as this curious little ear that's trying to capture the best possible sound.
So it's not just sticking it right in front of the sound source and calling it a day.
You can, but that doesn't always give you the best result.
Really? I would have thought that's what you'd want to do.
Sometimes it works, but the source material suggests placing the mic about 6-12 inches away and slightly off-center.
Off-center. Huh. Why is that?
Well, putting it right in front can result in a sound that's too harsh or too boomy.
Okay,
It's like shining a spotlight directly in someone's face. It can be too much.
I get it.
So positioning the mic slightly off-center helps you capture a wider range of frequencies and create a more natural, balanced sound.
Interesting. So you really have to think about the angle and the distance to get the best results.
Exactly. Okay, another important tip is to use a pop filter.
Okay, I've definitely heard of those. But what are they exactly?
They prevent those plosive sounds.
Plosives.
You know, those popping sounds you sometimes hear in recordings, especially with words that start with a P or a B.
Oh yeah, like when a singer gets too close to the mic.
Yeah, those are caused by bursts of air hitting the mic's diaphragm. The pop filter acts as a shield to diffuse that air.
So it's like a bodyguard for your mic.
I like that, protecting it from those explosive sounds.
All right, and the last recording tip.
Gain staging.
Okay, this one always sounds kind of intimidating to me.
It's not as complicated as it sounds.
Hopefully not.
It's all about making sure your audio levels are set correctly.
Okay, so like the volume knob on my microphone.
Kind of, but more like finding the sweet spot where the signal is strong enough to be clear, but not so loud that it causes distortion.
So what happens if it's too loud?
It can cause something called clipping.
Clipping, uh-oh.
Imagine a wave crashing on the shore, but the top of the wave gets cut off.
Ouch.
That's basically what happens to your audio signal when it's too loud.
Okay, I definitely don't want that.
You lose information, the sound gets distorted, and it's just generally not good. So gain staging is all about finding that perfect balance. Not too loud, not too quiet.
Got it. Game staging. The Goldilocks zone for audio levels. Well, we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have microphones, pop filters, the recording environment, gain staging.
It's a lot to think about. But we're not done yet, are we?
Nope. We've captured those beautiful recordings. Now we have to dive into post-production.
Ah, yes. The magical world of editing, mixing, and mastering.
That's where we'll pick things up next time. We're going to transform those raw recordings into something amazing.
Can't wait. See you next time for part 2 of our audio production deep dive. Welcome back to the deep dive. Last time we got our gear all set up, talked about the recording space, and even learned about that tricky game staging.
Right? It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But all that prep work is going to pay off now.
Because now it's time to make those recordings really shine.
Yeah. Post-production, editing, mixing, mastering. This is where it all comes together.
I have to admit, this is the part that always felt a little mysterious to me. Like, how do you take those raw recordings and transform them into a finished, polished product?
It is kind of magical, isn't it?
It is. Okay, so the source material breaks down editing and mixing into a few key steps.
Yeah, it talks about noise reduction, EQ, compression, and
Yeah.
then using reverb and other effects.
Makes sense. So let's start with noise reduction. This is where we tackle all those little background sounds that might have snuck in, right?
You got it. Like, remember we talked about computer fans or traffic noise? Those things can really distract the listener.
Yeah, you don't want your audio sounding like it was recorded in a wind tunnel.
Exactly. Noise reduction tools are super powerful. It's like having a little vacuum cleaner that sucks up all those unwanted sounds.
Okay, so after we've cleaned things up with noise reduction, then we move on to EQ.
Right. EQ stands for equalization.
Yeah, EQ. That one always makes me think of like complicated graphs and stuff.
It can get pretty technical.
But basically, it's about adjusting different frequencies in the audio, right?
Exactly. Think of EQ as a sculptor's chisel. You can use it to really shape the sound, bring out certain qualities, or tame others.
So like, if you're working with a vocal track that's sounds a bit muffled or muddy,
Yeah, you could use EQ to boost the high frequencies, make those vocals really crisp and clear.
or what if you've got a bass guitar that's just overpowering everything else?
You could use EQ to kind of cut back those low frequencies so it sits better in the mix.
So it's all about balance.
Absolutely, making sure everything sits together nicely.
Got it. Okay, after EQ, we've got compression.
Compression is an interesting one.
I always have a hard time wrapping my head around what it actually does.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head scratcher. Imagine you're listening to someone speak and they whisper 1 minute and then shout the next.
Okay, that would be jarring.
It would. Compression is kind of like automatically adjusting the volume so the quieter parts are more audible and the louder parts don't totally blow you away.
So it evens things out.
Exactly. It makes the audio sound more polished and professional.
Gotcha. So we've cleaned things up with noise reduction, sculpted the sound with EQ, tamed those dynamics with compression. What's next?
Now comes the fun part, adding reverb and effects. Reverb simulates the sound of different spaces.
Oh, okay. Like if I'm recording in a small room, but I want it to sound like a big concert hall.
Exactly. You can do that with reverb. It adds atmosphere and depth.
Cool. And what about other effects? The source mentions delay, chorus, distortion.
Yeah.
There are so many.
There is a ton. You can get really creative with effects, but a little goes a long way.
That's probably good advice for a lot of things in audio production.
Yeah, definitely. With effects, it's easy to go overboard. But when you use them sparingly and intentionally, they can really enhance the sound.
Okay, so we've cleaned our recordings, sculpted them with EQ, evened things out with compression, and added some special effects.
Are we done?
Almost. What about mastering? The source material talks about it being the final, crucial stage.
Right, mastering is super important. Think of it like the final polish, that last little bit of magic that makes everything sound amazing.
Okay, so what actually happens during mastering?
A lot of technical stuff. It involves adjusting the overall balance, dynamics, stereo image, things like that.
It's pretty specialized.
It is. For a professional release, you'd usually hire a mastering engineer. But even if you're doing things yourself, there are basic mastering techniques you can use.
Right.
Normalizing levels, for example. We talked about that earlier. It's about making sure your audio is consistent in terms of loudness.
So it doesn't sound too quiet or too loud compared to other tracks.
Exactly. That's especially important if you're releasing your audio online.
Right, because everything's getting streamed these days.
Exactly. And there are also things like stereo imaging, which affects how wide and spacious your audio sounds.
Okay, and then there are all those export settings.
Yep. Choosing the right file format and bitrate.
Wow, it's a lot to think about.
It is. Mastering is a whole art form in itself.
It sounds like it. Well, we've really covered a ton of ground in this deep dive.
I know, right? From gear and recording all the way to the final mastering touches.
It's pretty amazing how many elements go into producing audio that sounds really good.
It is. And, you know, even though we've been talking about all this technical stuff, what's really fascinating to me is the creative side of audio production.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's not just about following a formula. There's a lot of room for artistry.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we're moving from the technical stuff to the more creative, artistic side of things.
Exactly. How do you bring your own personality, your own style into the process?
I love that. We've learned the tools. Now it's time to find our voice.
I like that. Finding your voice. That's a great way to put it.
Can't wait to dive into that. We'll see you next time for part 3 of our audio production deep dive. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey so far.
We have explored all the technical stuff, gear, recording, mixing,
It's been pretty intense, but now I'm excited to shift gears a little bit
Are you too?
and talk about the creative side of audio production.
Yeah, this is where it gets really fun, where you get to express yourself.
Exactly. It's not just about knowing the rules, it's about using them to create something unique.
Finding your voice, I love that.
So how do we actually do that? How do we infuse our personality and style into the process,
Well, I think you can make creative choices at every stage.
even with the technical stuff?
Yeah, totally. Even something like choosing a microphone can be a creative decision.
I never really thought about it that way.
Think about it. Different microphones have different characteristics. They color the sound in different ways.
Oh, so like, if I'm recording a really soft, gentle song,
Right.
I'd probably choose a different mic than if I was recording a heavy metal band.
Exactly. Each mic has its own personality.
Okay, so microphone choice is a creative decision. What else?
Mic placement. We talked about how you can position it off-center for a more natural sound,
Yeah.
but you can experiment with different placements to achieve different effects.
Like what?
Let's say you're recording a singer with a really big, powerful voice.
Okay.
You might want to place the mic further away to get a more spacious sound.
Interesting.
Or if you're recording a quiet acoustic guitar, you might move the mic closer.
So it's about using placement as a tool to create a specific mood or feeling.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's EQ.
Ah, EQ. We talked about that before in terms of fixing problems.
Yeah, cleaning things up.
But you can use it creatively too, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Hmm.
For example, you can use EQ to make vocals really shimmery and bright.
Ooh, like in a pop song.
Exactly. Or you can use it to make guitars sound huge and heavy.
Okay, so EQ can be used to shape the sound in all sorts of ways.
It's super powerful, and so is compression. We talked about using it to smooth out the dynamics.
Right, but you were saying you can use it creatively too.
You can. You can actually use compression to add punch and energy to a track.
How does that work?
By compressing the audio, you bring up the quieter parts, make everything more consistent.
I see.
It can create this feeling of excitement, especially in genres like rock or EDM.
So it's like giving the track shot of adrenaline.
Exactly. And then, of course, you have the world of effects.
Oh yeah, the effects. We talked about those a bit before.
Reverb, delay, chorus, distortion. The possibilities are endless.
I know, it's almost overwhelming.
It can be. But it's also so much fun to experiment and see what you can create.
Yeah, it's like having this giant box of crayons and you get to color all over your audio.
I love that analogy. And don't forget about the power of silence. Yeah. Those quiet moments can be just as important as the loud ones.
Oh, I know what you mean.
It creates a sense of anticipation, lets the listener breathe.
Yeah, like the pauses in a conversation.
Exactly. It's all about using those elements, the sounds, the silences, the effects, to create a dynamic experience.
Wow, we've really come full circle.
We have, from the technical side to the creative side.
And they're both so interconnected.
They are. The more you understand the technical stuff, the more freedom you have to be creative.
That's a really good point.
And, even if you're not trying to become a professional audio producer, understanding these concepts can change the way you listen to music.
Oh, absolutely. You start to hear things differently.
Yeah, you notice all the subtle details, all the choices that the artist made.
It's like getting a backstage pass to how the magic happens.
I love that. It can really deepen your appreciation for the music you love.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, but I've learned so much.
Me too.
So, to everyone listening out there, we hope you enjoyed this journey into the world of audio production.
Yeah, keep experimenting, keep creating, and keep those ears open to the amazing sounds all around you.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for listening.